system because that's the trade-off. Are you afraid of the interior threat or the exterior threat? Which is greater? And of course, in our world today, Homeland Security is going to tell you every day where that threat should be. And the relevance about that is we have gotten sicker since 9/11 as an entire population because of the overall stress. And this is just wiping us out financially as a nation. Downward. And the pharmaceutical companies have made over in excess of 20% per year more profit than every preceding year. So in 5 years, they are making 100% more profit just because we've gotten weaker on this thing. And I would like to suggest something, Noah. This is an interesting possibility. That we are given a lot of instinctual abilities when we arrive here, and I would include self-healing as an instinctual ability that we got. But let me tell you about another instinctual ability, and then I'll come back to the reason why. All humans can swim the moment they're born. They can come out of the birth canal underwater. All humans can swim. It's guaranteed. Then I ask a question. Well, if that's true, then how come we have to put so much effort in teaching Johnny how to swim when he's 5 years old if he's genetically endowed already to how to swim? And the answer, then you go back and say, well, think about it this way. As Johnny was an infant, every time he got near the water, the parents threw a big fit. Oh, my God, Johnny's by the pool. Johnny's by the creek. Johnny's in the bathtub, wherever. But Johnny's got to figure it out because in his learning state, he's now got to figure it out. And he says, this thing, which I now recognize as water, is very dangerous. Why? Because every time I get near it, these people go crazy. And so the issue about it is, so now that Johnny believes in his heart, deep down in his knowing of experience, that water, it means death. And then you put a bathing suit on him, and you want to throw him in the water. And I know he's scrabbing like a cat with claws, He's not going to let go. Why? Because you've conditioned him for 5 years that water's going to kill him, and now you want to throw him in the water, okay? He can't swim after that. He lost it because of the fear. Now, put that into it, and so we add this back to the healing thing. We're all able to innately heal ourselves. It was a given. It was built in. People were here a million years before medical school, so there was a lot of life going on in healing before doctors were here. And the issue about it is this. Now take these people, these kids, go back into that infancy of that child and things that we now know that actually the child is downloading memory even before it's born, so everything is being recorded. And here's the thing it finds out. Every time that child gets sick or someone in the family gets sick, what's the dialogue? Oh, we got to take Johnny to the doctor. We got to take Johnny to the doctor. Or everybody, anybody got sick goes to the doctor. This is a learning. What does it say? It builds in a consciousness program that says that if I get sick, I have to go to the doctor. Yeah, but you're already innately able to heal yourself. Not after the learning, because the learning overrides the instinct. Why? The learning of the fear of the water overrode the instinct of swimming. So what happens now is what? The belief that says that the first step in my healing is I go to the doctor. And then the innate system can start to kick in because you've accomplished step one. And the joke, if you think about it, is how many people get well on the way to the doctor? And the reason is once you start to complete that step, then you're telling the system, okay, let's go ahead with the rest of it. I did the first step. And I think that is the interference part. It's a learned consciousness override of an instinct, I think.
But then this, presumably the same belief step would kick in if you're going to an alternative doctor of one kind or another. There would be no difference there, surely.
Maybe even more so, because if you get enough people to say, I went to this practitioner, and there's enough belief behind that practitioner, then
yes,
that's an enhancer for healing as well.
Yes.
So I would certainly go along with that, yeah. And I think that's very interesting because as you're dealing with England of how to deal with this, in the U.S., we're already past 50% of the people that will go to an alternative healer before they go to a medical doctor. Why? Because of A, personal experiences, and B, the experiences of all their other friends and their family people that have gone to the same kind of healing thing. So it's propagating its own self into a greater and greater percentage. And ultimately, we'll start to learn who we really are. And I think this is a problem for me. It's interesting because I spent some time in Australia, New Zealand, and it's interesting because I'm talking about the nature of our learning overriding our abilities. In other words, you were given abilities, but your consciousness can override these abilities. And in these countries, they voice it in a way that we don't voice it, but we follow the same thing. They call it cutting the tall poppies. And what they mean by that is when you plant poppies, they all pretty much grow up to the same height. And then every now and then some poppy shoots up higher than all the other poppies. And so the resolution is anything that shoots up its head higher than all the other heads, you cut its head off. And the nature of what that represented is when a child starts to express properties that go above or beyond the average, then there's a social tendency to tear them back down, cut the tall poppy, and say, who do you think you are? And this who do you think you are, to me, is the most important learning kind of thing, because if you doubt yourself, then no matter how capable you are of doing things, that doubt will pull the rug out from under it. So, for example, walking across hot coals. Now, people that walk across don't have doubt about that belief generally. And I don't think that they want to entertain a doubt, because if you're halfway across and then say, wonder if I can do this, then it's too late, okay? But it's interesting because those that believe they'll get burned, and those that don't believe they'll get burned will not get burned. And that's only a matter of what's the difference. It was only a difference of their belief about it. I use another example, two more that I really like about this, because it really says you are far more powerful, except your beliefs undermine who you are. And so I'll give two more examples. Just one is and many people have seen this, like a woman lifting a car up to get a child out from under the car. Well, I mean, you get good weightlifters, they're going to lift 400 pounds. That's really supreme. And here's a woman who's not athletic in any way, lifting up, not the whole car, but certainly on one side, it's got to be 1,000 pounds at some point, lifting it up to get a child out. Not that she questioned her belief about it, because there was no question. It wasn't even in her mind that it was questionable. I have to lift the car up to get the child out. So it doesn't go into doubt. You can't really pick that car up if you try to think about it and say, I wonder if I can pick this car up. That would create the problem. And the last one, we have walking across hot coals, lifting up 1,000 pounds or more. And the one that I really like, I say for last, is down south we have Pentecostal Baptists. They work themselves up in a Jesus state and of ecstasy, and they get all excited about how they're testifying that God protects them. And many of these people in this Pentecostal church down in Kentucky area and Virginia area, they play with rattlesnakes and copperheads, poisonous snakes, and testament that God's going to protect them. Even if they get bitten, they don't really have any consequences of it. But those aren't the cool ones. The coolest ones in the group have so much faith that God will protect them, they drink toxic doses of strychnine, and they have no harmful effects. And you have to stop and say, how weak am I or how powerful am I? And the answer is, to me, it really comes down to this. Who do you think you are in your belief issue and what we've been programmed with? And for me, when I started to become aware of this, it was really essential to go back and think about your childhood experiences where you were told all the things you couldn't do. And who do you think you are kind of things, and you don't deserve things. Well, every time those were implanted, those became programs that interfere with the unfolding of the system. And this consciousness can redirect the programming. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, I agree, and I think that the importance of belief, which you point out very clearly and strongly, is just one aspect of the bigger question of the power of the mind and the nature of the mind. This is really the biggest unsolved question in science. And, for years, scientists simply ignored consciousness. It doesn't appear in physics and chemistry textbooks. And so biologists, thinking that all life could be reduced to physics and chemistry, ignored it too. Psychologists in much of the 20th century tried to pretend it didn't exist in behaviorism and similar academic disciplines. But now it's really firmly on the agenda. And what's so interesting is that the debates that happen, for example, in the Journal of Consciousness Studies or in Brain and Behavioral Sciences, have now more or less blown apart the naive materialism, nothing but the activity of the nerves. As soon as you start asking those questions and start looking at the details, it gets much more complicated, and simple answers don't work. And no one knows the answer, but the debate is opening up, and I think this is one of the most exciting areas of science at the moment. I hope to say something about it tomorrow. But I don't know if you follow the consciousness studies literature much, or is this an area?
It depends on what level you're talking about. If it's the one where I have to read the papers by taking a dictionary out, and deciphering all their words. I don't read a lot of those.
No,
but I have been following on, so
Yes.
lead me into where we're going with it.
The other area that we don't have time to talk about really, but the other area that I think is really exciting is the way in which biological research is revealing that inheritance works in different ways from the standard DNA inheritance pattern. I know you're interested in this in epigenetics. I've been interested in recent research that shows that plants undergo mutations at vastly increased rates when under certain conditions in ways that ought not to happen. Bacteria undergo, they produce mutations they need when they're needed at far above the chance levels. More and more of this evidence is piling up, showing that the whole genetic system is no longer simple, just copies of DNA. There's much, much more going on. It's much more complicated and much more interesting.
Well, yeah, and here comes the catch, though, for all this, because we want to do all this research. And yet, what has been very clearly demonstrated, and I think there's so many wonderful articles about this, is that as physicists have told us that the observer gets involved with creating a reality. And the science has now revealed very clearly that the experimenter's consciousness totally is involved with the outcome of these experiments. So the concept of the idea in the old days of, oh, it's just all free experiments, now all of that has to be reconsidered in the context that the observer is altering the outcome of these experiments. And there's a lot of wonderful studies. I love one. Some people may have heard of Cleve Baxter. And he had shown that, for example, that if you take some brine shrimp and take them from a beaker where there's a big colony of them, and then take a small sample and take that small sample and stick it in distilled water, that causes these brine shrimp to blow up. I mean, for brine shrimp, agonizing situation. What he noticed is that when he dumped the little aliquot into the distilled water and those Artemia were beginning to die, that in the original colony that he took them from, there was tremendous activity and turmoil going on at the exact moment that the other ones were dying. So he's saying, oh my goodness, these colonies are connected. And I read about all that. That was pretty neat. But I read a paper that came out from 3 young guys who were working in an official biology laboratory with chemicals and all that kind of stuff like that. And they said, they read that and they said, but we're growing brine shrimp. Let's just try this. And it was neat because they set up just like Cleve did the experiment. And every time they threw that little aliquot into distilled water, the original colony went crazy. And they got so excited, they said, now let's do this to write it up for publication. Well, now that science got into it, they said, well, to make it more regular and, more, repeatable, let's set it up so a computer runs it. And so the computer would take the aliquot out at a certain time, dump it into distilled water, and then the machine would read the turmoil. The moment they put it on a computer, the experiments no longer worked. And it was published that they worked when they did it, but not when the computer did it. And so then you take that, and it's interesting because in the British Medical Journal, there was a series of articles about how the pharmaceutical industry is involved with the research. And what they found out was that when the same research is carried out by independent funds versus funds from the pharmaceutical company, that when it came from the pharmaceutical company, 4 to 5 times more likely to get results that supported their interest. And they weren't cheating, but they went into the issue with a total consciousness belief that they were believing what they wanted to see. And so to me, it's a real correction factor I think we have to bring back in, that we are not separate from our experiments and that we are contributing to the outcome.
Well, let me just say one more thing. I think we should open this up for questions. One point on this, I published a study recently on how objective is regular science. If you look at, we know that in medicine they make a big thing about the importance of double-blind conditions. If the patient and the doctor know which pill is the placebo and which is the real one, it doesn't work. So you have to do those under blind conditions. In psychology, people do blind experiments because the expectations of the psychologist can affect the results. This is well established in medicine and psychology. I wanted to find out how much normal scientists are aware of the possibility of bias in their experiments. Is the fact that science is based on consensus because it's about objectively real reality, or is it because scientists themselves, by reaching a consensus, tend to produce similar results? And
pharmaceutical companies have made over in excess of 20% per year more profit than every preceding year. So in 5 years, they are making 100% more profit just because we've gotten weaker on this thing. And I would like to suggest something, Noah. This is an interesting possibility. That we are given a lot of instinctual abilities when we arrive here, and I would include self-healing as an instinctual ability that water, it means death. And then you put a bathing suit on him, and you want to throw him in the water. And I know he's scrabbing like a cat with claws, he's not going to let go. Why? Because you've conditioned him for 5 years that water is going to kill him, and now you want to throw him in the water, okay? He can't swim after that. He lost it because of the fear. Now, put that into it, and so we add this back to the healing thing. We're all able to innately heal ourselves. When he was an infant, every time he got near the water, the parents threw a big fit. Oh my God, Johnny's by the pool, Johnny's by the creek, Johnny's in the bathtub, wherever Johnny. But Johnny's got it figured out because in his learning state, he's now got it figured out. And he says, this thing, which I now recognize as water, is very dangerous. Why? Because every time I get near it, these people go crazy. And so the issue about it is, so now that Johnny believes in his heart, deep down in his knowing of experience, God. But let me tell you about another instinctual ability, and then I'll come back to the reason why. All humans can swim the moment they're born. They can come out of the birth canal underwater. All humans can swim. It's guaranteed. Then I ask a question. Well, if that's true, then how come we have to put so much effort in teaching Johnny how to swim when he's 5 years old if he's genetically endowed already to how to swim? And the answer, then you go back and say, well, think about it this way. As John's system, because that's the trade-off. Are you afraid of the interior threat or the exterior threat? Which is greater? And of course, in our world today, Homeland Security is going to tell you every day where that threat should be. And the relevance about that is we have gotten sicker since 9/11 as an entire population because of the overall stress. And this is just wiping us out financially as a nation, downward. And the